Right.
All right.
So, welcome to our workshop for the Center for Music Education at Georgia College, Intro to Choral Programming. I'm Dr. Jennifer Flory, Professor of Music and Director of Choral Activities at Georgia College. Um, and I've been here a few years. This is my 18th year, and had 3 years of K through 8 teaching experience and 3 years high school choir. All of my K-12 experience was up in Ohio, and then uh, came down to Georgia. So we'll go ahead and get started. So here's an overview of what we're going to be looking at, sort of two parts. So how to select choral repertoire, criteria of what to consider when you're selecting it, where to look for rep, and then a few tips for in that selection process. And then the second part is about programming a concert. Um, and if as Avery has been in our choral ensembles program, she knows that I prefer themed concerts, and we can talk about that when we get there. But we'll talk about whether to theme or not to theme. How do you provide aesthetic experiences and maintain variety in your programs? And then lastly, just a quick look at logistics for concerts and order, like how do you decide what order to go in. So we'll go ahead with the selecting choral repertoire section. So in terms of the criteria, I would imagine that most directors probably do this, but this is something that you can't kind of skip over, or if you do, you may end up with rep that you aren't able to successfully complete. You have to think about the size of your groups, and the voicing. Obviously, if you have SATB or SSA or TTBB, you're going to want to look for music that fits the voicing uh, characteristics of your choirs. Consider the age or level or the experience that your choirs have. Obviously, I wouldn't choose something for a children's choir that I would probably choose for my college choir, or vice versa. And then consider their ranges. And when I say ranges, I mean actual like individual student ranges. This is something in the K-12 world that I would recommend doing at least once every 9 weeks, possibly more often, especially in middle school when you're dealing with changing voices, to do a quick sort of range testing to figure out the range of your singers. And then sort of keep track of that so that you can look and say, hey, can I do a piece that has a low G on the staff and the bass clef, or do I not have any basses that can hit that? Or if I'm looking at something that has a high A for the sopranos, do I have any sopranos that can comfortably and reliably sing those notes? The second area of criteria is considering what your desired outcomes are. And these would be outcomes for your students, outcomes for yourself. What kind of musical concepts are you looking to cover or to address in terms of standards, and in terms of sort of the development of your students as musicians? Sort of where are they in their development and where do they need to go? And how can you use repertoire to help them get there? In addition, what kind of artistic or expressive outcomes do you have for your choirs? Is it something that you want to really attack something that's kind of edgy or might be a little bit um, deep emotionally? And are you sort of prepared to do that? And then the aesthetic appreciation angle is this is something I think you always want to do, is to choose music that your students are going to end up liking. Notice I don't say like, because they may not like it immediately. They may like it once they learn it. But having that appreciation for different aesthetic traits of different repertoire is really important to impart. And then textual understanding. Um, in terms of text, you're going to want to choose things that are appropriate for the age of your students and for sort of your situation. Um, if you're in private school. Avery, you're in a private school, correct? And it's religious based. Okay, and I taught in the Catholic schools as well, and so I could do sacred music no problem. And you could do sacred music no problem. Not to say that you shouldn't do some secular music as well, but looking at sort of your situation, the context in which you're teaching, and decide, okay, what do I want to do with this text? And then thirdly, what is the purpose of the performance? Obviously, you're going to choose something different for a holiday concert than you might for a Grandparents' Day program, or Veterans Day versus Martin Luther King Day, kind of Black History Month type thing. So consider the context, consider the audience. Is this going to be a school assembly that the students are singing for? Or is this going to be a public concert where you have parents and community members and other teachers? And then where is the venue? And that really comes to play, maybe less in terms of choosing rep, but more in terms of sort of what are the acoustical natures of the venue you're in. Um, and so if you're in a super, super live space, say like the rotunda at the mansion, at the old governor's mansion, you may not want to choose something that's super polyphonic because it just kind of gets muddied, whereas more homophonic things may work better, um, or just at least considering the venue when you choose. So moving into sort of the nitty gritty of the criteria, and this is what you want to consider when you're actually looking at the music and you're considering different pieces. So difficulty level is something that sometimes is given to you. Oh, Avery, Lex wants to say hi. Hey, buddy. You haven't seen our new kitten. If he comes in, I'll pick him up. His name is Onyx. So in terms of difficulty level, sometimes it's really, you just want to be up here. Okay. Sometimes it's published on the publisher's website. It might say, moderate difficulty, or, um, you know, very difficult, or it might say easy, or that kind of thing. Those kinds of ratings, I think, are helpful. But some of that you're going to have to gain by just looking through, and looking at other parts and assessing basically each piece. Does the piece have musical and or educational quality? Is it a quality piece of music? And this, to a certain extent, is a little bit subjective, because you may not like something that I like, or I might not like something that you like. But do you feel like it has some worth artistically? And if so, then go for it. Text, is the text, as we talked about before, is the text appropriate for your level of students, for your age of students? Um, are there text parts that you might want to change if you're in a certain situation? Maybe so. The ranges and tessituras of the pieces. Again, some publishers put this at the beginning of the music. They'll show the ranges for each voice part, which is super helpful. Most do not. And if you have a library of a bunch of older music, then you really have to kind of look through and look for the highest note in the sopranos. Usually your altos and tenors may be okay, although you may want to look at the highest note for the tenors, the lowest note for the altos, lowest note for the basses, just so you at least get the ends. And make sure that it doesn't, in terms of tessitura, do you know what that term is, Avery? Okay, so basically, where does it lie? Where does it stay mostly? If it's something up that's right around the top of the staff in the treble clef, your sopranos are probably not going to want to do that unless they're, more developed and more older singers. Um, and then looking at the musical elements of the piece, melody, harmony, rhythm, form, texture, as, in addition to other musical elements. Are these things that you want to work on with your choir? Are these standards that you want to achieve through choosing this music? In terms of texture, really looking at, can your choir handle a polyphonic piece in 4 parts? And if they can't, then you may not want to choose something that has mostly polyphonic texture. Is the form repetitive? Is it an ABA form, or is it, we're doing one piece right now that I can't remember exactly what the form is, but I know it's got a number of different variations on the A form, and it's got a couple of B's that are pretty similar, a C, a D, and an E. And so, sort of, what is the form of the piece? If it's something that's verse and chorus, then, that is a little bit more achievable for younger choirs than, say, something that has 5 or 6 different sections. What are the accompaniment needs? Is it a cappella? Can your choir sing a cappella? Are they sort of at that level yet? Um, if it does have an accompaniment, what is the accompaniment? Is it just a keyboard accompaniment? Do you have access to an accompanist? Are you able to hire a pianist to come in and play while you conduct? Um, does it have an oboe obbligato, and do you know someone that plays oboe? Or can you find someone, and do you have any money to pay them? So those kinds of things. I mean, it's great to choose things that have like really cool accompaniments. But if you don't think about sort of what you need for it, and then you've already chosen it, it can make it kind of tricky. Are there solos in the music? How do you want to deal with that? Do you want to have students audition for the solo, or is it a more difficult solo that you might have to hire a soloist to come in or ask a friend to come and sing? Um, and then sacred versus secular, and we talked about this a little bit before, but looking at sort of that balance of sacred and secular in a program, whether you're in a an environment that could do sacred no problem. I think there is a lot of value to introducing secular music, just as I think there's value in introducing sacred music in non-religious school settings. Um, Looking at the style and the performance practice of the piece. If you choose a piece and it has a performance practice background, say that this piece is usually done with orchestra, are you going to be able to do it with orchestra? Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't do it if you can't do it with orchestra, but I've found one way to address that is to do movements. So, say, do a movement from a mass that usually has orchestra, or do a movement from a requiem, or a movement from an oratorio that would normally be accompanied by an orchestra. But you're not doing the whole thing. So you're giving your students a sort of flavor of the genre without actually having to put it on as the composer intended. And then composer inclusion, and I think I'll have some other slides as we go through here. I think it's really important now, and it's been important, but I think it's more important now than probably it's ever been to try to include composers from underrepresented groups. So composers of color, women composers, composers from various gender and backgrounds, or that identify as LGBTQ, composers from different countries. I mean, there are a lot of different ways. But finding those, I'll have some resources to suggest. And then fitting this piece within the context of the performance. And that might be like, okay, if it's a theme concert, does it fit the theme? Or if it's not a theme concert, which I have a really hard time with sometimes. Usually when I do non-themed concerts, I choose one piece from each musical era or each time period. Because I'm like, okay, that at least gives me some box to choose from to sort of fit in. I have trouble if I just have all the music in the world to choose from and I just have to choose a few pieces. So does the piece fit within the context that you're planning for it? So getting on to where to look for these things. If the school where you are has a library, a choral library, you can start there and just sort of browse through. If you have sort of a personal choral library, as I built through teaching and then grad school and then teaching again, I've got, I think long lateral file drawers full of choral music. So just sort of browsing through that. You can go to reading sessions, often at GMEA or ACDA conferences, but also sometimes like JW Pepper will put on a reading session, or a publishing company will put on a reading session, either in person or virtually, where you're reading through, you're singing through, and when these are in person, it's really quite good because you got a bunch of music teachers in a room, and they're all singing the music. They're sight reading it, relatively well, and you've got somebody up front conducting, and you've got a pianist, so you get a good flavor for the pieces, and the people that curate that list for the reading session generally are folks who have experience in choosing rep. Um, Going to or watching or downloading state, regional, and national conference performance programs is a really good way to find music that you might not be aware of. And this, I didn't put this in there, but like LGPE. Um, so you can look at state required repertoire lists, not just for Georgia, but for Texas and Kentucky and Ohio, and kind of look at what different places are requiring. And those usually are sort of rated by difficulty, which can help you again if you want to do, if you decide, okay, I think I want to do a level B piece, you can just go look at that list to sort of start your search. The NAFME website has some good resources on it. Um, you have to just search like choral repertoire, and a number of articles come up. ACDA actually has a website that has repertoire on it. It has a link to the YouTube channel for ACDA, a link to Musica International, and then links to vetted lists from the repertoire and resource committees. And I'm going to see if I can get to this. So this, scroll down here. So they have children and community youth choirs, junior high, middle school choirs, senior high choirs, and so on. And you can just kind of go there. Let's see. Avery, you doing, is it K-12 or K-8?
I'm doing middle school.
Middle school, okay. So if we went to that list, they actually have reading lists from conferences going back to 1989. They've got a national conference middle school list. Um, and then you could view this through JW Pepper. They've got regional chair, they have a good number of resources on their website, which I think is really helpful. Also, ACDA has publications that will have reviews of new choral music or recordings of choral music, and that's the Choral Journal, or they'll have articles specifically about certain types of repertoire or repertoire by certain composers. Core Teach is another ACDA publication that is helpful. And the International Journal of Research in Choral Singing might not have as much rep specific, but it's still probably a good place to look. And then Chorus America has partnered with the National Collegiate Choral Organization. Basically, they're transferring the Chorus America publications to NCCO. So American Choral Review and Research Memorandum Series is sort of moving, so it's not really accessible too much now. But this is where the article that I did with Megan Johnson, who is one of our, Megan McInich, one of our bachelor's and master's students. We worked on that together. It took us a couple years, but we got it done. And then my David Hamilton articles are also with Research Memorandum Series, and that's it's a good resource, but it's not maybe as helpful if you have to join Chorus America because it's kind of expensive. But all right, so moving into other places to look at, I'll share all these slides with you, Avery. But basically, each of these is linked, so you can go to each of these publishers' websites. Briley, I think, has, oops, not Boozy, Briley, has some good stuff for middle school.
Dr. Flory, if you'll share
Yes,
the slides with me, I'll post them on our website as well.
absolutely. Absolutely. So Briley has things. that I think probably would be good for middle school. Um, so they have unison and two-part chorus. And most of their music, I think, has the ranges on the front. Let's just look at this one. Has the ranges on the front. It has accompaniment and rehearsal audio part tracks on their website. Um, it gives you the language, the use, the timing, and the fact that it's of moderate difficulty. And then you can preview the music. So you can play a recording while you go and look at the music. You probably can't hear the music, but that's okay. Um, it makes it so you can't really copy from there, which is good. But so Briley, I think, is really good for middle school. Um, Cypress is mainly Canadian choral music. Boozy and Hawks is a British publisher, but they have American sort of publications. GIA, most of that is Walton. Avery, you and I did some of those when we were using the choral. What was it? Match My Sounds choral coach. My choral coach. So, Graphite is mainly new composers, new music for composers that are not printing their music, but they are basically allowing you to buy the PDF and buy a certain number of licenses to make a certain number of copies, which is more and more convenient, especially as there are supply chain issues with publishers. And you go on the website and it says 4 to 6 weeks, and you're like, I don't have that much time. So it's really nice to be able to go here. I want to see if why am I not remembering her name right now? Um, one of the composers for one of the pieces that we did at the presidential inauguration at Georgia College, I think I purchased from this site, which was good because the printed version I couldn't get. I don't think we got. We still haven't gotten it. So I ordered it in June and it's still not here. Oxford University Press is another British publisher, but has a lot of good choral stuff. Santa Barbara is one that probably has some that might be good for middle school. Let's see if I can. Yeah, so you could just press that, and then you can scroll through. Um, and this has pieces that are by composers of color and by female composers, um, and you're sort of able. And there are I'm sure are a lot more middle school ones. It's just that those are the ones specifically that are medium level, I guess. So, um, so moving on. Other places you can look, sheet music retailer websites. I'm sure you've been on JW Pepper and Sheet Music Plus probably. Sheet Music Plus is what we use most of the time, mainly because I have a membership that gives us a little bit of a discount, and if you're buying a lot of copies of it, it kind of makes a difference. Also, Musical Resources and Stanton Sheet Music are both based in Ohio, but they ship nationally and probably internationally. And Stanton's has a really good, like, they have links to the publishers' websites for recordings and previews and things. Music Notes is all PDFs or downloadable pieces. Public domain, Avery, you're familiar with CPDL, right? Okay, and IMSLP is sort of a more broad musical public domain library, but has some choral pieces. And then other online databases. This is a shameless plug. This is the American Treble Choral Index that Sarah Clegg and I put together, using the research that Megan Johnson and I had done. So you could go in and look at music writ or composed by American. Oh man, I didn't realize it wasn't working. I'll have to fix that. But anyway, so when it's back up and going, that's a good reference for American composers, specifically for treble choirs. And Musica International is just kind of a mind blowing database, but I would not call it comprehensive. But you can search for, composers by their name, by their century, country, year of birth or death, their gender. You can look for specific texts, authors, or specific publishers, and really just it's a wealth of information. But I wouldn't feel like it is comprehensive. When I did a search for American composer treble music before Megan and I started our project. It came up with like 300 pieces, and I think we stopped cataloging at like 1,500 that we came across otherwise. So it's definitely not comprehensive, but it is, again, a good place to start. And then the last area of resources that I wanted to recommend for choral music selection are resources related to diversity. Um, and some of these came about after 2020. Some of them were going on before that, but I think they're all, really good things. Um, in 2020, somebody started this spreadsheet, and it's not exhaustive, and it's not peer reviewed or anything, but um, they have a list of songs that we probably shouldn't be performing without putting it into context. Um, and Dr. GM and I have had that conversation, and we talk about that in reference to Tracks on the Trail and doing some of the pieces that composers used or arrangers used the music from a minstrel song and put new words with it and made it a campaign song, but that we can still present that, but in the context of sort of how it was used. But there are a lot of good resources here. And I'm excited because putting this together was like, oh yeah, wow, that would be cool to check. And so when I start choosing music for next spring, I'm gonna come here first. So to close out the selection, choral repertoire selection part, just a few tips. Variety, you want to choose a variety of musical styles, historical periods, and cultures. We'll get a little bit more into that when we get to programming. Inclusion, um, as we saw in the previous slide, I would recommend that you choose music by composers from historically underrepresented groups. This is something that I've tried to do for every concert, at least one choir, if not both choirs. Try to have a piece by a female composer and try to have a piece by a composer of color. Or sometimes you can find a piece by a female composer of color, and that's like extra points. But it's something that I think allows students to start to see the wealth of quality and um, just kind of undiscovered gems that there are in the choral canon that are by composers of color and by female composers. And then lastly, choosing rep that challenges your choir because that will allow you to yield great rewards. Sometimes music that's easy is fine because it's easy and you can get it done quickly and it has sort of more immediate gratification. Whereas if you put a piece that is more challenging, I'm trying to think, Avery, what was the one that we did? The Sun piece in spring of 21.
I don't remember what it was called.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It was hard.
it was really
It
hard.
was and it was a cappella, and I, wondered whether we were going to get there. And then, we got there, and I think everybody felt stronger for that rehearsal process, and really, I think when you achieve um, mastery of a work that is really challenging, that really pushes sort of the boundaries, you get so much back out of it. So, and I saw this yesterday at our high school choral day. Um, I had chosen three pieces. We ended up only doing two because it just there was no way to put together. Some of the schools were late because of bus issues, and so in the 2.5 hours of rehearsals we had, basically, I was like, well, we're not going to do the middle piece because if we try and do it, we're not going to be able to do well on all of the pieces. So I just say, okay, we're just going to do these two, and we're going to work really hard on them. And in the concert, I was pleasantly surprised because some of the kids I think came knowing nothing, like hadn't even looked at the music, much less, um, had mastered it. But by the concert, like things went pretty well. And the piece that we did that was like double choir, where I pulled most of Max Noah out, and it was just the high schoolers with maybe one Max Noah person per their section. It came out really well. It was really exciting. So again, I think finding music that can challenge you and your choir is really rewarding. So Robert Shaw is one of my favorite choral conductors, sort of historically. Um, and I like this quote. Yeah. So being in a choir is not is about being a part of a team or a part of a group of people that are working toward a common purpose. And I think that's very noble. So anyway, moving into programming a concert. So in terms of theming or not theming, dictionary.com defines theming as a unifying or dominant idea, motif, etc., as in a work of art. I pretty much define it as it pertains to choral concert programming as an organizing principle for choosing repertoire, deciding on a concert order, and unifying a group of singers in a common purpose. So why do we theme? Avery, why would you theme versus not theming?
I would theme because the concert may come across as disorganized and unconnected. And if you want, depending on the purpose of your concert, but usually to to support and accomplish a purpose, you need to present something that is organized so that people know what you're trying to do.
Okay, absolutely. So sort of a unifying principle, that kind of thing. So I theme because I don't know that I could choose music otherwise. There's just so much music that exists. Choosing a theme helps me to focus the search. Um, in my church choir, I choose the anthem based on the scripture or the sermon topic because I want there to be some, theme or unifying principle of um, in the service. And so, extrapolating that to it, planning for a concert, that is something that I think is helpful. Avery, what kind of themes did we do or have you done even in other choirs?
Um, Georgia College, like the Georgia College choirs was the first choir I'd been in with like really clear themes for concerts. But we had the Music of the Spheres theme. That was the most recent one I remember. But everything had a theme.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I did one without a theme. It might have been maybe 10 years ago. But
Yeah.
we also had the stage and screen, songs of stage and screen, where
Yes.
we did like opera, chorus, and
Hmm.
that kind of thing. You could do, I've never done this, but you could do something that is like video game and maybe TV themes. Like the only thing about theming, and this would be sort of on the why not part, is sometimes the topic is too narrow.
Hmm.
And so you pen yourself into a very like small amount of repertoire to choose from. and so you might get things that you wouldn't choose otherwise, but they fit the theme. And that has I have done that before. Um, I think notably fall of 2010, Schumann and Schumann, because it was an anniversary of Robert Schumann's birth or death, and William Schumann, who was like the head of Juilliard, both of those composers. Those are very specific. And you can do that too if you just choose one composer. We've done that before, like a Mendelssohn bicentennial or whatever. And it depends on the composer. If the composer has written a lot, you can do that. Like there's enough variety within that own one composer. Whereas like Robert Schumann wrote a good bit, but William Schumann didn't write as much, and a lot of it was very sort of niche, um, funky text and things like that. And so that concert was a little bit too narrow. But you can also, branch out to a global music type thing like we tried to do in spring of 20. You could do an impressionism concert. You could do a concert of sort of memorial music. Composer anniversaries I like sort of looking at, to see, and that's a good way to again sort of bring out composers, maybe on their bicentennial or that kind of thing. You could choose composers from a country or a region. You could choose a major work and then companion pieces that sort of fit that. That like when we did Carmina. Were you there
Mhm.
when we did Carmina? So we did Carmina, and Women's Ensemble did hymns from the Rig Veda. So there, what was the title
Men.
of monks and men or something like that? Yeah.
Mhm.
So so that was interesting. And then but in all of these ways, um, you know, providing aesthetic experiences is one of the goals. So in terms of a no theme, how could you present a concert without a theme? Like what might you do, Avery, to decide how to deal with that?
Um, the concerts I've been in that didn't have a theme, they it was kind of just like the university singers showcase
Hmm.
and things like that.
And was there any, I don't know, like were there any specific criteria for the pieces that were chosen for that, or that you were aware of? Okay.
It was just what the director wanted us
Wanted
to
to do.
do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is great. And I admire people that can do that. I just have a
Yeah, it was
like, yeah,
yeah, great pieces. But it was in a non-auditioned university choir, and I think there wasn't a lot of buy-in. Like there were the people who wanted to be there, but when you have people who aren't really totally sold on being in a choir and they're just there because they need to, if it's not interesting, they don't want to be there.
hmm,
And even though we were doing some really like cool, great pieces, some of them maybe not so much. Um, Especially, and what's sad is that was at a university level, but even more so at high school and college. If they don't want to be there, the the experience for the whole group suffers.
right. Yeah, if you have some dead weight kind of folks
Yeah.
that maybe they show, or maybe they just don't come, or maybe they
Hmm.
come but they don't sing, and yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think that there are times when no theme is better. You know, if you only do theme concerts, sometimes you're not able to find pieces like early music that fits a theme.
Hmm.
Um, and so if you did like a showcase type thing, maybe every like once or twice every 4 years, you could fill the holes. You
Hmm.
could plug in the pieces from time periods that you really hadn't hit. Oftentimes, theme concerts end up being a lot of like modern. music or music by living composers, which is not a bad thing. But if you only do new music, then you deprive your students of, the historical um, basis.
Yes.
So, but anyway, and so yeah, a showcase or that kind of thing would be examples of that. So in terms of aesthetics,
I'm sorry, Dr. Flory. I was going to go back to the no theme. I used to program concerts around an educational goal. So if we were working on like developing key signature awareness and flexibility in a middle school band, then I would program music in various key signatures. So the music, there was a theme, there just wasn't a program theme.
okay, yeah, absolutely. And you could do that. You could do that too with specific like musical concepts like dotted rhythms or something, or music in compound meters. I mean, you could um, do that. Yeah, absolutely. I like that idea. So, in terms of aesthetic experiences, aesthetics itself is a branch of philosophy that deals with the nature of beauty, art, and taste, and with the creation and appreciation of beauty. So, in order to be truly successful, I think choral ensembles need to be led beyond the technical aspects of their music to experience the aesthetic qualities. For this is when music can make and really have the most lasting and pervasive impact. So, do you remember, Avery? And this can be any aesthetic experience from any of your choral experiences. It doesn't necessarily have to be early.
Like an ex aesthetic experience?
Yeah. So the way I would describe an aesthetic experience would be a goosebump moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Can you like specify one?
Um, uh, I I had a lot of aesthetic experiences like while performing when I was in a girls' ensemble.
Hmm. Yeah, that girls' choir in Augusta. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And sometimes it's a matter of sort of musical excellence that it
Hmm.
inspires those experiences. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. When I was in high school, went to all-state choir, and I was in Kentucky. And you've probably seen the videos of the all-state choir in Kentucky around the balconies singing the national anthem. Um, we didn't do the national anthem when I was there, but we sang "Birds Ave Verum Corpus" around the balconies, and I that was maybe not my first one, but the one that stays with me, or that has stayed with me the longest, of just having 200 some odd high school students and the conductors on the floor, and it wasn't as together as it should have been, but it was like singing in the rotunda times 100, with just so much acoustical, yeah. And so doing that was really like, okay, this is what I want to do. um, and so, you know I hope that you're able to create these opportunities to achieve aesthetic experiences with your choirs, and it sometimes takes some time. Um, we got through Cindy yesterday, the second piece that we did, and they none of them sang in the rests, which there are like two pages that have meter changes where there's some rests, and it's like every almost every UC rehearsal someone sings in the rest. These high schoolers, like 80 some odd high schoolers, along with maximum singers, nobody sang in the rests. And it was just like, oh. And there's this stomp, like clap part of it. And so it's kind of stressful because they're dealing with folders, but trying to do the stompy clappy thing. But when we got to the end and everybody said, we change it. It's written to say hooray, but we say yeehaw. And everybody said it, and it was all loud. And then the five people that were there for the concert all like, clapped really loud. Um, but I'm sure that, there were some students that had those kind of experiences. And so reaching that level, I think is really important. So they're attainable, but they may arise depending on how well your choices fit your choirs and how well you execute the rehearsal process. All right, so looking at variety over time. So, Avery, we were talking about themes and we talked about, um, you know, my concern is I do a lot of new music. So something that I did, and I don't think I've updated it, oops, in a while, but I need to update it, is I have a spreadsheet that has columns for different historical periods and then rows for semesters or years. And I just put an X in the column if we've done a piece from, the Renaissance or classical or whatever. And you could make a spreadsheet that has tabs for these different things to try to make sure that your students have just a variety of experiences musically. Um, and I mean, if we wanted to, we could add languages to this list, because definitely singing in different languages is um, a challenge and doesn't necessarily always overlap with cultures. Um, but different styles of music. Last spring, UC did uh, songs and sonnets by George. Oh, I just lost his name. Blind piano. George Shearing, blind pianist, and it's jazz. It's basically jazz, but it's not. It's jazz sort of in a choral setting, so it's not like vocal jazz where it's a small group, but there's some tight harmonies and there's some rhythmic sort of intricacies. And we just spent the whole semester on that and then a Vaughan Williams piece. And I think it was really neat because at the beginning of the semester, the students had a really hard time sort of grasping those harmonies. But by the end of the semester, they had nailed it. And so it was like, wow, I could probably do more music like that and it wouldn't be so hard to start because they'd have had that experience. Um, and same thing with, global musics or gospel pieces. Even throwing in a novelty piece every now and then, like, oh, I can't remember. There's some PDQ Bach pieces. And there's one with, I don't know if we did it when you were in Max Noah. It has kazoos. Does that ring a bell?
No.
Okay. It's really fun and I can't remember the name of it, but like doing some funky things every now and then is kind of cool. I really enjoyed pieces too that call for like body percussion, either clapping or stomping or that kind of thing. And this semester we're doing that like it's in the finale that we're combining UC and Women's and Max Noah, and it's also in one of Max Noah's pieces maybe more than one. So like, and I didn't necessarily do that on purpose to gather those pieces, but it worked out kind of well. And then I mean, obviously, you're not going to have all, and most of these genres are sacred, so you're not going to have all of those genres. But and I mean, pieces that are from the 20th century, we don't really subscribe to these types of genres necessarily. So these would just be, I guess, if you were looking at time periods past. In addition to sort of the music, you have to worry about logistical considerations. So in terms of scheduling, timing, where are you going to have the concert? When is it going to be? Deciding whether you're going to have a free concert or whether you're going to charge admission or you're going to accept donations. What's the situation where you are, Avery?
So for middle school, they do fifth grade through eighth grade as middle
Mhm.
school. And every year for like more than 25 years, they've done a fifth grade musical with just the fifth grade.
Okay.
And this year they have 13 people in the fifth grade. So, and they're open to new ideas. It just needs to be like a program. It doesn't even have to be a
Gotcha.
musical.
Yeah.
That's what's been done in the past. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of like logistical considerations that are already accounted for because it's traditional and they
That's
have a plan
helpful.
set in place.
Yeah.
But everything else is like we we don't know yet.
Yeah, I tell you what, that whole fifth grade thing, because I taught K through 8,
Mm-hmm.
and at one school, the Christmas program was like the second and the fourth graders, I think, or maybe the first and third. I don't know. It's been 20 years. Um, but one of them, it was fifth grade, and they always did a program for Grandparents' Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the cutest program, and I have no idea if it still is like in print. It was called the Granny Awards, but yeah, it's still available. Let me send it to you. Um, it is super cute. It's a musical fairy tale review for unison and two-part voices. So it is musical. It's about 40 minutes long. Um, and it's just adorable. Like, and the whole thing, it looks like is $100. Like for I don't know. I don't know what that provides,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm pretty sure that's what I did with the fifth grade. Of course, now I can't find the chat. Where's the
That looks
chat?
really cute.
It is adorable, and I still have like I have this little Cinderella slipper on top of a something, and it's just a little box that has like just a teeny tiny opening that you could put stuff in if you wanted. But uh, one of the students gave that to me, like after we did it, like as sort of a token, kind of like commemoration type thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I still have it. I'm trying to find the chat. How do I get to the chat while I'm sharing my screen? Just don't know. I don't even know how to unshare my screen.
Go up to, I know how to unshare. Go up to the very top and hover at the top, and then you should have the option to unshare, and I don't know about the chat.
Okay, I'm just not even sure where the hide video view. Okay, expand panel. Fine. I'm trying to get to where like I can see. Oh, maybe that's it. I'm so sorry. I'll send it to you, Avery, because I'm not
Okay.
gonna figure this out
I
right
can
now.
look it up too.
Yeah, yeah. If you Google the Granny Awards, it's probably like the second thing that comes up.
Yeah.
First, they think that you spelled it wrong, and it's Granny. Oh, there it is. There's the chat. All right, give me a second here. There we go. It's headed your way.
Got it.
Now I have to get back to the thing here. All right, let's do center view. Because of course I closed my presentation. Mm. All right, can you still see my screen?
I see presenter window,
Oh
logistical
no. Okay.
considerations.
Let me give me a second here.
Now we see your email. I mean, we don't see the emails itself, but
Oh man. Okay, if I can figure out how to stop sharing. Not video. I'm sorry. I really have used WebEx before,
That's okay.
although I'm slightly more comfortable in Zoom. But I
Me
have
too.
used this. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Share, share screen two. Now, do you see logistical considerations?
Yes.
Bonus. Okay, let me get back to my presentation. And I can maybe share some more things with you that would work because I taught in the Catholic schools.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think because you're in an Episcopal setting,
Yes.
I even had a fifth grader that was super cute. He wanted to do the lighting for the show. We didn't have any lights. Like we literally had like it was a it was a gymnatorium kind of thing. Like it was a
Mm-hmm.
gym, but it had a stage.
Yeah, that's what they have too. I think they have like a little bit of I haven't seen the setup yet, but they have something. So,
Yeah, it was really funny because this kid like got people's garden lights, like up lights, and got gels to put on them. Like he literally did, and I probably have it somewhere in a portfolio or something, but he drew a diagram for like what he wanted the lights to be. It was just so cute. I'm like, he's probably
Precious.
gonna go into theater tech like
Yeah.
for a career. It was just so cool
Mm-hmm.
and sweet. So anyway, okay. So admission, what are you doing with that? How are you going to publicize it? Making posters, doing announcements, maybe through a newsletter, you know, and some of that is already sort of decided for you in your situation because it's a tradition
Yeah.
or they have a certain thing. But if you went into a situation where like you're the fifth person in a row after 5 years, like there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be nothing, and you're going to have to figure out stuff kind of as you go. That's what happened to me when I taught high school.
Oh no.
Um, and then, are you gonna basically produce a program? I would recommend that. If nothing else, to have the names of the students that are in it, and if you're doing a musical, like what their roles are and things like that. I think it's really important to recognize them and to give them that credit. Um, but who's going to put together the program? Who's going to copy it, or are you going to send it to a printer or something like that? If you were doing a straight concert, you can decide whether you want to write program notes or whether you want to have someone read something. The past few years, we haven't done either, and it's been fine. I mean, I just don't like to kill trees.
Yes.
Maybe this fall, maybe we'll write program notes and maybe we'll like put a QR code in the program if people want to pull them up on their device or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. But I don't like to kill any more trees than I have to. Um, I mean, the one thing you do need to make sure you have is translations if you have pieces in a foreign language. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that I think is fine to just put in the program. Are you going to need ushers? If you have tickets, then you might need ushers because they're going to have to take the tickets. Do you have reserved seating or not? And there are a lot of things that sort of, when I came to George College, there had been somebody for a year, and before them there was somebody for 2 years, and before them there was somebody for a year, and then before them there was somebody for like 10 years. But by the time I got here, like a lot of that sort of tradition, that the 10-year thing, I mean, I knew that we did our concerts at the church, and that was about it. And I did my own programs, and I found my own ushers because the department didn't really, they just didn't sort of, they didn't support all of the events. They
Mm-hmm.
basically, like, the secretary would be at the guest artist concerts, but they wouldn't really do the band concerts or the choir concerts. It was very interesting. Um, but got that figured out, and then how are you dealing with the stage and the auditorium setup? Do you have risers? Do you have lighting? That kind of thing. And then how are you going to document the concert? Can you have somebody video record it? Can you have someone take pictures? Could someone audio record it? Sometimes the video recording is fine enough for the audio, but if you want like a better quality audio recording, you may want to, see if the band guy or the theater guy could, run some mics and just go ahead and record the audio as well as the video. And then lastly, and this is something I think that is easy to forget, but if you do forget it, it can be really detrimental to the sort of effect of the program, and that's rehearsing the logistics. And when we do that at the church, like I put the assistant director kind of in charge of that because you know ostensibly y'all are gonna have to do that at some point, and I don't like going up and down the stairs to be honest. So figuring out, how are people coming on? How are they going off? They're going to hold their folders in their left hand. They're going to smile. How are we bowing? That kind of thing. And if possible, have the groups, if you have multiple groups, allow them to watch each other if you have room for them to sit, if you still have room enough for your audience. Because I think it's really important just for the whole esprit de corps of the program that everybody supports each other. And I think that I mean, that's the culture we have at Georgia College in the music department anyway, so I think it's a good way to achieve that. So, in terms of how to's, probably want to begin the concert with a piece that's going to grab the audience's attention. If you start with something that's slow and that's soft, maybe in a minor key, it your audience may not react the way you want them to. Whereas if you start with something that's sort of rousing or loud or fast, sometimes that can just kind of make sure that they're paying attention. In terms of how to proceed, you want to carefully place any pieces that are kind of unusual. Like we had a piece with electronics at one point. I don't remember when. In the mid-teens or earlier. And I think we ended up putting it, we didn't put it last or next to last, something like that. You probably wouldn't want to do like a gospel song or a spiritual song and then a motet. It'd be like kind of weird. Oftentimes you want to move from sacred to secular if you can, or from serious to lighter music. And I'll talk a little bit about in a minute about the continuity of the concert, but you may want to end with something either so beautiful or so exciting that you leave the audience wanting to hear more. Like they'll probably be clapping and they're hoping you do an encore, and you're like, no, I'm not doing one. Just gonna have to wait till next time. So, um, but there's a certain amount of continuity versus variety, and I think this is what you were talking about, Avery, before with the idea of a concert that doesn't have a theme. It's
Yeah.
hard to find that continuity um, when you just kind of feel like you're just bouncing from piece to piece, and there's not really a through line or anything connecting them. Um, and within that, you want to make sure you have enough variety. Um, Sometimes I've been guilty of when first choosing rep for a concert, I go through and have a big list, then I narrow, 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 and then I look and I'm like, I always add a column for tempo, and I add a column sometimes for meter or sometimes for key, but oftentimes I'll end up choosing like slow, soft, sort of pieces. And I'm like, oh no, 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 we can't have this many slow music. Or I like choose like four a cappella pieces. And for Max Noah, that's doable. For UC, not as much. Depends. But so I think it's helpful to have when you're sort of deciding what you want to do in a concert to sort of check things as you go, like accompaniments, voicings, tempo and meter, um, text relationships, texture, that kind of thing. And then when you decide how you're going to put them in order, if you have more than one ensemble, it makes sense just logistically to not necessarily to have one ensemble perform and another ensemble perform and another ensemble. I think the reason I usually bookend our concerts with UC is because UC is so much bigger than the other two ensembles that I feel like the audience kind of needs like to be grabbed at the beginning with a loud, bigger piece, and to be sent out with kind of a finale thing. And oftentimes I like to try and find a piece that we can do combined. We're actually going to start and end the concert with all three ensembles this fall. We're going to start the concert with an arrangement of the national anthem, and we're going to surround the audience and ask them to stand. And they will love it, I think, because it seemed like everybody loved it at the inauguration when we did it in August. And then we're going to end with this setting of an American folk song called Cindy that's for two choirs. And mainly it's UC in one choir with a few Max Noah tenors and basses, and then women's and Max Noah combined in the other choir. And I'm hoping that turns out well. It turned out well with high school choral day. So if they could do it, I think we could do it. So, but looking at difficulty level, you may not want to put something super difficult first you may want to sort of ease into it for your choir's sake. Um, and then looking at tonal centers or modes, um, sacred to secular, serious to light, that kind of thing. And then if you have things that are stylistically similar, you could put those together, or you could split them up. It's kind of up to you. If you have something that involves movement, you may want to, especially if it's a lighter piece, you may want to put that more toward the end or toward hello kitty. um, and then same thing with antiphonal effects. That Cindy is going to be antiphonal to a certain extent, and we're going to do that at the very end. And it also has like instrumental involvement and that kind of thing. And then here's sort of a recommendation. So you plan the concert like a dinner. Start the concert with something that serves as an appetizer, right? And then a salad, and then about 3/4 of the way through the concert or 2/3 of the way through the concert, have a main course or a heftier piece. And this for us this semester is going to be Max Noah's doing the piece that I cut from the Choral Day program called Horizons, and it's an amazing piece. And then I don't remember, Max Noah I think has one more piece, and then UC will come back up and do a couple pieces, and then we do our finale together. And so, the finale for us is probably more like a bigger piece of cake than is on my slide, because it's with all the groups and all of that. But there's sort of a flow to a concert, just like there is to a meal. And then lastly, try and make things interesting. Explore the space that you're in. When we surround the audience in the holiday concert, it's not necessarily because I'm trying to do something cool. It's because we don't fit on the stage. We don't have risers. But explore the space. Use the space to your advantage and figure out something that will work. If you can do some movement, some choreography, um, or some sign language, that I think works really well. And if you can do something new, you may want to commission a piece, or you may want to find a piece that has only been performed once or something, and do a southern premiere of that. Um, and then how can you play well with others? How could you involve an interdisciplinary focus to your concert? Could you reach out to the art department and talk to the art teacher, and maybe she could have like a gallery outside the concert that's somehow related to the concert? Could you talk to your foreign language teacher about coming in and helping you with the language, but then maybe having something cultural on display? Is there a dance? Is there some song that might involve dance that you might be able to get a sort of dance person involved, or students that dance well? I'm seriously considering some square dancing in this in Cindy, because it's a folk song, and it has like a long instrumental break, and I just sort of pictured like two couples like on either side of me like doing a like dancing. So I don't know if that's going to happen. They want to get cowboy hats for everybody, which also might be interesting. But doing something fun always just keeps your audience on their toes. So I didn't quite stretch it out to 2 hours, but here's some suggested resources, and I'll definitely share this. I may add some to this list, so I ran out of time a little bit to add some of the newer resources that I used, so I can do that before I send it to Dr. HD, and I can send it to you as well. Do you want to put your email address in the chat? Because I
Yeah.
don't know if I have your, of course, if I get to the chat.
Um, it's really easy.
Okay.
And then my school
Oh,
email
perfect.
is also really easy.
Let's see if I have. Just gotta find your, probably under Garrett in my phone because I don't think I changed it. Yep. Okay, actually.